never run out of things to say.
Good afternoon from a very sleepy and very lazy Birmingham boys. 4 of the 5 members of the coalition are lying almost exactly where we left them this morning, sleeping under a bush. And I would like to say good afternoon from myself, Stefan Winterboer, and on camera today is Andrew, who's going to be in charge of bringing it through to your screens. It's been quite a weird afternoon. The wind has been blowing in gusts, these hot gusts out of the north this afternoon, which is quite rare. Normally our wind blows in from the south or from the east, but we got this hot wind from the north, and it's chased away the cold of this morning. This morning, for the first time in literally 2 weeks, I considered putting my gloves on. It was freezing, and at the end of drive we had this rolling bank of clouds coming in, but it's completely burned off. There's absolutely no cloud around at the moment, and the temperature is around about 27 degrees Fahrenheit, around about 27 degrees centigrade, sorry, around about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And being the size that these boys are, and they are of a size, I reckon that these are easily male lions weighing upwards of about 180 kilograms, close to about 350 pound. They would generate a massive amount of metabolic heat, and it's one of the reasons why these cats are not active throughout the day. They run a serious risk of heat stroke, and so they're just busy relaxing. And as I've known or grown to know these boys over the last few weeks of them being on Djuma, they are probably not going to be going anywhere before the sun goes down, and then have this massive period of movement where they tend to move between 2 and 5 kilometers a night, we're seeing, barring the odd occasion where I've heard that they've actually done more than that, but they're not moving much more than that, rolling their heads off, chasing around all the lioness and all the male lions in this particular area. And the saga continues. The Birmingham boys take over of the Matimba males' territory. Or I wouldn't say take over, more than just squashing themselves a space. Now there you've got confirmation of the fact that lions are contact species. Have a look at those 2 boys there in the background giving each other a hug. They're lying facing one another, arms intertwined, or I should say legs intertwined. And it's funny, you know, no matter how hot these lions get, they'll always find time for a couple of members of a coalition or pride to lie on top of one another. They've been doing this since they were cubs. So it's quite interesting to know is that generally large coalitions, when they're a bit younger, will start off as a large coalition. The most I've ever seen are 9 male lions in the Kruger National Park, 9 lion coalition. Generally we get up to 5 male lion coalitions. Most commonly are 2 to 3 lion coalitions. But this particular coalition is 5 males. They're not necessarily all from the same litter, but they will definitely be from the same pride. And from what I can gather, 4 of them are from the same litter, and one of them is from a litter about a year before this, so he's a year older than these guys. That particular male lion, I think, is the one that's lying off a short distance. He's about 300 meters away from these guys. And quite often, after a coalition has managed to successfully take over a territory and defend a territory for a year or more, coalitions have been known to split. They will spend more and more time with their siblings, their direct siblings. And in this particular case, it looks like we're going to have that blonde male, or blondie as Hayden affectionately called him in November last year. It looks like he will be on his own, and these 4 will be on their own within the same territory, and that's important to know. They won't start an adjacent territory. That will be in the same territory. They will just not spend all their time together And there also won't be one male lion that's more dominant than any other. The dominance or the hierarchy between these brothers was sorted out already when they were cubs. And now it's just a question of them as a coalition defending a territory together, hunting together, making sure that any female that comes into estrus is covered so that their children, their genetic legacy gets put into this pride or into a pride. And they share those duties, not equally all the time. I found that lions definitely have a personality, for lack of a better word. I'm trying to think of a good word to use there, but personality is the first word that springs to mind. And you'll find that one of these guys will be more aggressive, and one will be a better hunter, and one will always seem to reach the females in estrus first. But in effect, they all equally share the duties or the responsibilities of ruling over a territory. And that's important because it's not a common train of thought. Around the world, we've been brought up to believe that one male lion is in charge of a pride and he has subordinates. And while that is definitely true in areas where cub mortality is high, it is not the case in the Kruger National Park, where more often than not you have coalitions of males that hold territories. In actual fact, I don't know of a pride that has one male that has lasted more than a year. Almost all of the time it's coalitions. The reason for that is because the cub mortality is relatively low here. And what I mean by that is I mean that more male cubs survive into maturity from any litter than anywhere else in Africa. The average is about 8 out of 10 cubs die for every 2 cubs that reach maturity. That's average in Africa. I would say that it's probably half of that in the Kruger National Park. And as a result of that, you get coalitions and very large prides of lion. Not too far away from here, near a rest camp in the Kruger National Park called Satara, there's the largest pride of lion that's ever been recorded in the park, currently lying at 46 lions in one pride. Can you imagine? And they held over just by 3 males, I think. 3 or 4 males are in that coalition that hold that. Imagine, 46 lions. It's amazing those lions aren't grey instead of tawny. And looking at these Birmingham boys brings up the obvious question which John has been first to ask. John in California. Good afternoon, John. You've asked where are the Matimbas and where are the Nkuhumas? And John, that's a good question. As far as I know, my last update that I have of the Matimbas are in a reserve south of here called Chitwa, which lies just on Djuma's boundary. As the crow flies, probably 3 or 4 kilometers from here. And the Nkuhumas are lying not even 2 kilometers from here. The Nkuhumas are lying in this direction, north of where we are, 2 kilometers away. Texan, one of the rangers for Djuma, tracked them this morning. He didn't find them, he just tracked them right in this direction. These lions roared the last time as we found them this morning, and I can't actually remember what time we found them, but it was fairly early. I would say it's probably around about 7 o'clock this morning they roared for the last time. And Texan says it looks like as soon as they roared, the Nkuhumas stopped moving and are somewhere in a block 2 kilometers from here on the Biffleshoek Torchwood Djuma boundary. Excuse me, looking over my shoulder like that. We've just got another vehicle joining us. Alright, and I've just had Jamie giving me an update that she's come across her favorite elephant at Djuma, and she wants to give you an update on that. So while these boys are sleeping, I doubt they're going to jump up and run away now, whereas Jamie's elephant might do that. Enjoy Jamie's elephant. We'll be waiting here for you when you come back.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. And I am indeed with my now favorite elephant that I've seen on Djuma, and we finished yesterday's Sunset Safari with her, and we've now started this afternoon's Sunset Safari with her. So a really awesome way for me to start the afternoon. I do have a really serious soft spot for this particular female. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and I have VM, the wildebeest, on camera with me this afternoon. And we're going to be spending a little bit of time with this very special Ellie and her two companions. This particular female has a shortened trunk that was almost certainly caused by a snare, just looking at the way that it's healed. So it would have been caught in a snare at some point in her early life. And yesterday afternoon we watched her as she was eating, and how she deals with that particular now physical disability. And she's still got the most amazing dexterity with that trunk, but she uses her mouth far more to take direct bites from the plants around her that she's feeding on. And other than that, she's in perfect condition. She doesn't look thin or like she's suffering in any way. But I am glad that she has still got companions with her. And that's what makes elephants such amazing animals, is that she will always have company and at least the protection of a couple of members of the herd throughout her life. And this little one I saw yesterday with her. I'm not sure if it's her calf or not. I haven't actually had a chance to determine gender either, but definitely sticks very close to this particular female, so could well be her baby. A little bit older now, probably in the region of about 3.5, 4. And judging by the bond, almost certainly her daughter or her son. It looks like a female to me, but I haven't had a good chance to have a look. And as most people will know, I do have an incredible soft spot for elephants in general. They're one of my favorite animals out here. I always find their company incredibly soothing and relaxing. And there is something very special about this one. And now that I've seen her a couple of times, I'm starting to think it might be not a bad idea to start thinking of names for her. I think that she deserves one, especially as she does seem to hang out around Djuma quite a bit. Hello, big girl. And she's got relatively clean-cut ears, a couple of small notches around the middle, but it's that shortened trunk that makes it very, very easy to identify her. And I'm actually going to put it out to the viewers that if you can think of a really nice name for her, I would love to be able to share that. And I'll have a look through and maybe pick one, having sat with her, that I think best fits her personality. And I will say now, she is quite a feisty individual. She's guaranteed to give you a head shake as you move up to her. which is something that I absolutely love about her. So if you do have suggestions for names just between us and the Ellie, I would love to hear it, and you can send those through to #SafariLive on Twitter or to questions@WildEarth.tv. And I definitely heard more elephants off in the distance. I think we might have the company of a big male fairly soon. And I do think that these Ellies are going to be around here for a little bit longer. They're quite happy in the open space. So for now, we are going to cross back across to Steph, who is still with the Birmingham boys, and we will catch up with you a little bit later.
Well, welcome back to these Birmingham boys. I heard that you've been visiting with that elephant with a very short trunk that Jamie likes so much. Quite sad to see, but I mean it's always amazing to see how these elephants manage to get by. And as far as I'm told from vets, the only thing that's terminal, a terminal injury on an elephant, would be the loss of their feet, the loss of their ears, or the total loss of their trunk. Can you believe? Other than that, pretty much anything is survivable for an elephant. Lions are just as tough. Male lions in particular, they're born hard, they live hard, and they die hard. There's nothing else to really talk about with that. They really are some of the most amazing creatures when it comes down to that. Now, for those new to the show or newish to the show that don't know too much about the Birmingham boys, I have some information on the Birmingham boys that relates to me telling you about that big pride of lion that hang around Satara area where there are 46 lions. In 2013, in October of 2013, in the Manyeleti, a pride called the Open Pride arrived, and this Open Pride was 22 lions strong, 22 lions, and inside this Open Pride were a lot of males, and this coalition of 5 is as a result of that. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I deduce from that now, which is quite interesting in terms of lion dynamics. When a pride, let me start with the females. The pride is actually centered around the females. The females are the key of the pride, but an area can actually only hold so many adult female lions. And when there is that carrying capacity, or that load of female lions has been reached, let's give it a number, 6 female lions. When there's 6 adult females and a couple of young female lions coming up underneath them, the females all of a sudden stop having lots of female babies. Their cubs will be predominantly male. Can you believe that? And so prides will go, and you reach what they call a mature pride dynamic, where you have 6 to 8 females, adult females, you have a couple of young females, there'll be 1 or 2 baby female cubs, and the rest of the cubs that all those females will have will be males. And from what I understand from that, when a pride is successful, when it's genetically successful, meaning when the mix of male and female genes is so good that they are able to overcome their environmental pressures and the pride stabilizes at maximum, it doesn't help if that pride's numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because they're successful, because eventually what they'll do is they'll chase away all the animals in their territory. So the females' bodies know that. How they know that, who knows, but they know that, and they start to have male cubs, and therefore the successful genes of that pride, whatever the mix is in that pride, then leaves that area to go and become part of other prides and hopefully make other prides stronger. Isn't that fantastic? I just thought that's an interesting story. And that open pride, the pride that these males come from, obviously comes from a strong background. It's obviously a mature pride with very good genes, and now we've got some of those genes here at Djuma. And when these guys finally settle down and they start injecting their genes, their successful genes, their survivor genes, into the prides here, it can only make the lions in this area stronger and better. And that's good news. It's nice to know. It's nice to know that these guys carry with them the greatness that their mothers instilled in them. And hopefully the lionesses that these lions sire will do the same for their prides, because the titles of, for instance, the Nkahuma pride, the females, the adult females, it's a hereditary title. The Nkahumas have been living here in this area, who knows, a couple of 100 years, couple of 1,000 years, who knows how far back their family goes, their family tree goes in this area. A fly is really bothering that lion, and I promise you I can really relate to that. I feel like I need a tail that is constantly slapping flies around my face as well. Now he's the male lion that has the black eye. You can see it's the eye that's facing us at the moment. He received that black eye on the day that they had the clash with the Styx pride, and killed those two cubs. And with it, his brother on the left hand side, that's just a little bit out of frame, that one that's there, got bitten on top of his head. He either got bitten or he got clawed on top of his head, but he's got a big hole into the muscle on top of his head. You can't see it from this angle, but he got up just now to scratch it. The flies are obviously biting the scab and are irritating him. Disa has just asked me an interesting question watching these lions lie on top of one another. Do the lions in a particular pride, or in this case the coalition, all have the same smell, or are their scents different? Disa, I've never read anything that's going to help me with this answer, so all I'm doing is basing it on my intuition and my knowledge and experience. And I'm going to say that every lion has their own smell, but because they're such a social species, the lions in a particular pride or coalition will all know one another's smell, will be intimately familiar with their coalition brothers' smell. And you notice this when they rub one another. If they all had the same smell, I'm imagining there would be no reason for them to rub foreheads like they do. Why they rub their foreheads is that a lion's face is covered in sebaceous glands, and out of this sebaceous glands exudes an oily secretion, and they constantly rubbing this oily secretion onto one another. And potentially what happens is there's a mixture there. Each lion has their own smell, but it all combines to join a particular coalition smell. Who knows? Good question there, Disa. That's a nice question. And Jamie's just asked if you can go back to there. The elephants are heading into a thick block, and she just wants to show you them before they disappear there. So we're going to send you back through to Jamie. We'll be waiting here with the lions. Don't go anywhere. Ciao.
Welcome back, guys, and as I thought, we were graced with the pleasure of the company of this rather large male, and the first thing he did was poke one of the youngsters in the bottom with his tusk to move him out of the way, and then he kicked the female off the tree she was feeding on and took over feeding from it, and he's gone back to join her once again. I don't think she's terribly chuffed with his presence, but he doesn't seem to mind too much. He looks perfectly comfortable. He's just looking for the best knobthorn feeding opportunities, but she's had enough. She's done. She's off. And it looked as though she was going to go north into this block, but we are very, very close to the dam, to Voyatella Dam. So it could be that she decides to go for a drink as well. But it's all there in that body language. She's not happy with his intrusion on her personal space. He's going to try again though. He's going to follow behind her. And if I'm right about the assessment of her youngster's age, then it could well be that she is due to come back into estrus fairly soon, which might explain his interest. He's definitely following very, very close behind. He's giving all of the signs of typical elephant courting behavior. Just trying to get a good sniff, see if a mating opportunity might be on the cards for him over the next few days. But she's definitely not giving any of the signs of a female Ellie in estrus. Generally, female elephant, when they are ready to mate, tend to be quite vocal and advertise that fact quite clearly. They have what's known as the estrus walk, where they walk with their tails up in the air and their heads held up. Something of a little bit of a strut. She's not too interested in his affections. What an interesting picture those four make. Quite a unique little herd. I think there are more elephants off in the drainage line, but I think that this female, because it takes her a little bit longer to feed, she often trails at the back of herds. Here we go, little one staying close to mom. Let's try and stay with them a little bit. They could well be going towards the dam. If they're not, then I do know that that block up ahead gets very, very thick. If they do not head towards the dam, then we could well be losing them fairly soon. So let's stay with them as long as possible. That's following her is still fairly young. He doesn't have that pronounced forehead of an older, more mature bull. He's probably somewhere in his early 20s possibly. So he's still got quite a life ahead of him. Watching all of their tails very carefully as I make my way behind them. I'll stop here. typically the tails are a really very good mood indicator when you're watching elephants. That swishing from side to side is the sign of a very, very relaxed Ellie. And I'd love to know what's going through all of their heads right now. I'm certain there's some communication happening there, even if we can't hear it. And let's see if she decides to go left towards the dam or carry on straight into the drainage line. She might just be looking for more shade. And that's definitely not the route to the dam. Going for a drink. Nope, changed her mind. Thought she was about to go down the dam. And this does make for quite a nice perspective of this Ellie bull. We don't often get them from down below like this. It certainly doesn't look as though she's heading towards the dam, which I was hoping they would do. And I'm going to just try and loop around and see if we can get them back on the other side. I do know that that area is very, very thick, so we could very well lose them in that block. Well, not lose them, but we could struggle to get a nice visual of her. And while I'm looping around to relocate that very special female, I'm going to send you back across to Steph with his lines, and I'll be back with you a little bit later.
One of of the lions got up and just lay right here by the car. I don't quite know what he was doing. He was just moving from one shady patch to another. But he's come and lay right next to the car and left his brothers lying there in the sun. You'll see now over our shoulder. There he's here, like lying right at our shoulder. The shade is a little bit deeper here, but you know, it just goes to show how comfortable these animals are with our presence. Really didn't even look in our direction. You can see his small little mane, which will fill out nicely. By the time he's 6 or 7 years old, he is going to have a beautiful mane. However, is sometimes the case. Kruger males tend to have quite scraggly manes, except for the hairy-bellied male that we've got here. He's the most beautiful mane that I've seen in the Kruger National Park in a long time. You might find that these males' manes never really developed. You do have, I've even seen maneless lions, and believe it or not, in Botswana I even saw a maned female lion. Can you believe it? So not uncommon for you to get maneless lions and maned females. And since I don't know what their fathers look like, I don't really know what their manes are going to turn out to be. It'll be interesting to see. For those of you who keep screenshots of these males, contrast them year on year, and you know, it's going to be wonderful to see how they develop over the years, for sure. Having a look at that male that's lying on his back over there. With their white bellies, they radiate off a lot of heat, and it's one of the ways that they keep themselves cool is by showing their belly to the sun. I mean, he couldn't be more relaxed even if he tried. But it also brings me on to a question that Lisa White sent in, who asked, how is Blondie's leg? And you know, Lisa, I specifically looked at Blondie this morning when he walked out in front of me to see if he's still limping on his leg. This morning I couldn't detect any limp from him, so it looks like he's okay. Yeah, I couldn't really detect any limp, and I don't know if Blondie is one of these lions here. I doubt it. But that also brings me on to the next question that Evan sent in from North Carolina. And where is he? Now, as I drove in here, he was lying on the other side of the road. He's probably about 100 meters away from these four. Not too far away, not in line of sight, but you know, definitely right here. And it's not necessary that they all lie with one another all the time, but it just further sort of highlights the fact that these four males might be siblings. They might be from the same litter. He definitely isn't. He's a bit older than what these male lions are. He also has a much bigger body. Or by much bigger, I can perceive his body to be bigger. He probably carries another extra 50 to 100 pounds of weight. He's a beautiful looking male. These guys are very relaxed at the moment. He's lying in the full sun. I can't imagine that he's getting anything but hot, and I can fully expect him to actually wake up in the next couple of minutes, or at least roll over and present his other side, because he must be baking at the moment. I know I am. Got his leg up on the branch. Now, coming back to our previous discussion that we were having just before you went to go and have a look at the elephants, Maggie M has asked a nice question, in that the Pride of Lions, the numbered 46 lion that I was talking about near Satara, she's asked a couple of questions here, all pertaining around, I suppose, their nutrition and how they hunt. Maggie's asked, would they have to hunt every day? Is it reasonable to expect that they would they would be able to finish a large buffalo in one day, and how long would that sustain them? And Maggie, it's a sort of indirect answer that I'm going to be giving at the moment. And we can discuss it, or I'll discuss it with everyone here. Is a male lion needs 5 kilograms of meat per day. So he needs to stay healthy, or to have a healthy metabolism. A male lion needs to consume 5 kilograms of meat per day. It's not always possible for a male lion, obviously, to eat 5 kilograms of meat a day. Sometimes they eat 25 kilograms in a day, and others they have none. But if you use that as a general average over a year, and we can maybe halve that for the pride average. Females will eat about 3 kilograms of meat a day, and youngsters will eat a bit less than that. So we can average it out on, even less, perhaps 2 kilograms, 2.5 kilograms of meat per lion per day, times 22 lions. That's this pride's needs. And since I don't have a calculator in my head, it's probably around about, 2 kilograms times 22 is 44 kilograms. No, it can't be. Let's ask Tara to work it out for us. You wouldn't mind, calculator? I'm trying to do the maths in my head while I've got the sun beating down, trying to swat flies around my head over here. It is very distracting trying to do maths with all this going on. But let's just say it's around about 440 kilograms of meat per day for the pride. That is around about half a buffalo. So they would need half a buffalo a day for a pride that size, times 365.25 days. That's how much meat this pride would consume on average in a year. And that brings us on to another topic of conversation, is that large lion prides, or lion prides in general, can only really exist where there is a self-sustaining grazers, a herd of grazers. So lions exist at the top of a trophic pyramid and show that there is balance in a system. If there's balance in a system, lion prides can exist, and they will exist into perpetuity, given that that system is in balance. When you take out grazers, or when you take out producers, things like grass, the pyramid collapses, and the first thing that you see going is lions. And it brings us back nicely to World Lion Day, which was last Monday, and the plight that lions are in across the world. Lion numbers are dropping dramatically across the world. In the Kruger National Park, in the census last year, lions dipped to below 1,000 lions for the first time since they started recording lions in the Kruger National Park. And when I started in the park, there were about 2,500 lions recorded in the census in 1998, alongside 2,500 ahina, which was the average. Now lions number less than 1,000 in the park. And this is all because domestic livestock and grazers compete for the same food source. People are growing more and more and encroaching onto these wilderness areas, and grazers, things like zebra and wildebeest and everything else, are retreating into the last few refuges, which are the national parks, even though Africa has immense national parks. And what we're seeing is lions moving with them. Often before the grazers move off, lions have moved off. And now we only find lions in national parks, really. And that is one of the reasons, it's the core reason that lion numbers have so dramatically crashed over the last couple of years. Now, in areas like this, where lion prides are sustainable, it does show that there's a balance in the area, and that's good. It's a nice thing. It's nice to know that whatever we're doing out here is having little to no effect on on this whole trophic pyramid, on the whole balance of things, the equilibrium that everything has out here. And it makes me feel doubly as good that we can share it with all of you. And while we sit here in the sun, along with the lions, wishing we had a cool drink, elephants have made a plan, and Jamie wants to go and show you what's happening with them. They've just reached the waterhole. So enjoy cooling off with the elephants, and we'll catch up with you in a little bit.
Welcome back, and I'm just going to sit quietly for a moment so that we can listen to this really impressive bull as he drinks. That trunk of his can hold up to 12 liters of water in one go. So he's getting lots and lots of hydration. See how with each sip he pulls it up into his trunk and then holds his trunk in his mouth as he swallows what's inside there. Perfect way to keep cool on a very, very warm afternoon. And elephants can drink a large amount during their day. So if you think that each trunkful could be somewhere in the region from 10 to 12 liters, and he's already had about 5 or 6 while he's been standing here. Are very, very thirsty animals, and that's partly due to their very inefficient digestive system. They need lots of water to keep it functioning smoothly, and although they can go for days without drinking if they have to, especially in desert environments, they do prefer not to. They will try and drink as often as possible. And off he goes to join the rest of them who are there at the back. And that's where the female with a slightly shortened trunk is. And a big thank you to you all for all of your name suggestions. I do appreciate each and every one of them. And we've had, amongst others, Kira and Brava and Jamal for Jamie's elephant. But it does seem as though Peter Pretorius has met and named this elephant before, and he apparently called her Mlonga, which is the Esperanto word for short. And and I think that fits her perfectly. And I wouldn't want to rename her when she does have a perfectly good name already. But I will always recognize her. She's got a neat little cut flap with a dangly piece of skin on her lower left ear. So I'll always know her. And here she is with her two little companions, probably one of them her calf, the one on the right, the younger one. I'm not sure about the older one. Could also be a calf from, or the previous calf, so an older sibling. But they do look quite close in age, so it's difficult to tell. But as I mentioned before, with her shortened trunk, she doesn't keep up too well with the rest of a big herd. She has to stop and feed. And it takes her a little bit longer. If she has been separated from the herd that she was born into, then it could well be that she is busy forming her own new herd with her youngsters, with her offspring. She will forever be the matriarch and the leader over the next 30 or 40 years of her life. And as always, accompanied by the dulcet tones of the grey go-away bird, expressing their displeasure at the world, telling everything to go away. They're not alarm calling in this particular instance, they're just calling to each other. And the one that's doing a lot of the shouting, I think might be going down for a drink. He's just a little bit down and to the right, hopping down to the water's edge. Yes, I'm just, while we're talking about grey go-away birds and alarm calls, there is a squirrel shouting. It's quite difficult to tell where that's coming from exactly. I think somewhere close to the lodge. We are very, very close there. And he is very upset about something, but I can't actually hear what it is. And my suspicion is that it's probably at a bird or a bird of prey or a snake, but I'm going to loop around that area anyway in a moment just to double check. But we were listening to the alarm calls of the go-away bird, and although or at least the call of the go-away bird, and although their alarm call sounds very, very similar to that call that they were just making now, there is a very frantic edge to it. It's almost more abrupt and a little bit harsher when they are properly alarm calling in response to something. And when one grey go-away bird starts to alarm call at a genuine predator, the rest of them will definitely start to follow. In fact, birds often fly in to have a look at whatever the threat is and get an idea of where it is, so that they can feel safe in whatever situation they are in, because they can see it. Squirrel's gone quiet again, which makes me think that it's not too serious a threat. Squirrels, when they do see something like a leopard, tend to chatter about it for quite a long time, even after the leopard has passed by. Ellies are just pulling up the last of the grass and the small shrubs from this area. I want to just wait here a moment and see if they want to come and have a drink. They might have already had their drink for the afternoon. I'm not sure if there are any zoomy updates about whether or not these elephants came to drink earlier. I'm going to shift forward ever so slightly just so we can get that tree out of our vision, although they might move forward. I don't want to go too much further forward because we are right in front of the lodge and there are still guests around enjoying their late afternoon lunch before they head out on game drive. And the fact that Peter Pretorius has already named this wonderful character is an awesome thing. But thank you, Charlie. We will definitely find another adorable elephant character. Although I think that the time that I've spent with this one, just watching her feed and struggle a little bit with that short trunk, has really, really endeared her to me. She's got a special kind of character. Quite a feisty elephant, and I have been told that on foot she tends to be fairly unfriendly towards people walking around her, but I'm sure she's very, very protective of her little family. Just watching some of the guests move off onto their afternoon safari vehicle. I see a nice easy way down to where these elephants are from the other side of the dam. So I'm going to loop around and just reposition so that we can see them.
The access way just here.
Is there access down here?
Yes,
okay.
Cool.
VM's telling me that there's a way in from here, so we're going to try it like that. Just having a look at what these Ellies are up to and which way they're going to go. And while I do make my way down this somewhat steep bank, we're going to cross back across to Steph, and I will be back with you a little bit later with a slightly different perspective on where these Ellies are.
I'm back with the Birmingham boys, and this young male is still lying behind our vehicle where he got up and walked to just now. Quite nonchalantly, just casually came and sat down right behind the car, and he's busy giving himself a bit of a groom. Doesn't look like they're waking up, it just looks like they're hot and uncomfortable. The flies are bothering them intensely. And as we were just discussing amongst ourselves now, it doesn't seem like they've eaten in the last couple of days, and you might find that some hunger pangs are keeping them awake rather than letting them sleep or full belly off. I must say that it's not a sentiment that's shared by his brothers, who seem to be unconscious on the other side, all lying, touching one another. can see the rest of the pride, or the rest of this coalition, just each having a turn to lie on their back and radiate off some of that heat that they're generating. None of them are particularly full. And we think the last time they ate was about 2 or 3 days ago, easily 3 days ago, unless they've swallowed something small in the interim, although it doesn't really look like it. Have a look at that paw. That's generally what we are tracking when we're tracking these guys, is that back paw. The back paw obviously stepping into the footprint of the front paw, even though, and this is a very good example of how big you can see the size differences between that front and the back paw, and you can clearly see the 3 lobes on the bottom of that paw, 3 evenly spaced lobes on the plantar pad, which is that pad behind the toes. Housing retractable claws, very similar to our house cats. 4 claws on the back foot and 5 claws on the front foot. What amazes me is the thickness of the base of the tail. It's not something that we often talk about, but it's easily as thick as my forearm. It doesn't look like it from this particular angle, but that male lion's tail at the base where it joins his body is about as thick as what your forearm is, or my forearm, which is, doesn't look like it, but it definitely is. Not at the wrist either, about halfway up the arm. No scars on the belly. It's another favorite place for bite marks to become apparent. But when they're attacking one another, the lumbar region of the spine, the belly and the top of the head are areas where lions bite one another when they want to do some harm. And as you can see, he's got no scarring there whatsoever. So far so good for him. And looking at these brothers lying so comfortable with one another, Gracie has asked, and Gracie is only 8 years old, and I just want to say good afternoon to you, Gracie, and wow that you're watching this program this time of the day. It would be interesting to know where you're from, Gracie, but you'd like to know if they have any sisters and where are they. Well, the sisters, Gracie, stay within the pride. They don't move out of the area. They stay in their pride. That pride has a core territory. They don't move out of that area. And their sisters are probably with the Auckland Pride or the Birmingham Pride in the Manyeleti, close to a camp called Tinswalu. That's where this pride was first seen, in this particular area. Probably coming out of the Kruger National Park around the Open Gate area, which is very close to Tinswalu. So I would presume that they are still there. If they had sisters, I'm also presuming that they had sisters or a mix of sisters and sons, although from what I've been told about this particular pride, when they were seen at Tinswalu, the pride was full of males, or at least the youngsters were full of males, a lot of males in the pride, which shows that the pride is healthy and it's robust. And there's a very good chance that these 4 males, part of this litter, had no females. There is a possibility. And if they did have a sister, it would be 1 or 2 sisters only. Take off my hat so that you can see that it's me. Now Vanessa has also asked a question in relation to male lions. One of the other male lions that we obviously see the Matimba male lions quite often, we see Junior quite often, and we see the Birmingham boys quite often. And Vanessa has asked if or could Junior join this pride or join this coalition? The easy answer to that, Vanessa, would be no, absolutely. He's from a different pride, and it would not be in these male lions' best interests to have Junior part of their coalition. He's not part of their genetic strength. He has not been with them since they were born. He has no connection with these male lions, so it goes against everything that we know about lions. You might find that Junior might be in association with these lions, and by association I mean if they had to come across Junior and he was sufficiently submissive that they might leave him alone after teasing him a little bit, after giving him a bit of a bully. But the older Junior gets, the less likely it is that these males will tolerate Junior in this area, and it's becoming more and more real that Junior will be chased out of this area as soon as these males establish themselves. Not a problem, it's what's supposed to happen. And it's just going to be Junior's trial in life. Gracie has just let us know that she's from Ohio, which is incredible because it means that she's watching this program quite late or early in the morning. And it just goes to show how wonderful this interactive nature of this particular product is. And as you'd know, or you might not know, you're welcome to send through comments, suggestions, any questions, maybe not suggestions, but definitely your comments or questions using the hashtag Safari Live, or you can use or email us at questions@wildearth.tv, or using the email address questions@wildearth.tv. And if you don't have any questions, you're welcome just to send through a comment about whatever you're feeling or whatever you've experienced in Africa, you know. Dennis from Lakeville has done exactly that. Dennis says that he was fortunate enough to go to the Masai Mara in 1991 and came across a mating pair of lions that were just absolutely covered in flies. And Dennis has wanted to know if a female in estrus attracts more flies. Wow, Dennis. I'm going to say no to that question. I may be proven wrong, but even though a female's in estrus, there is a scent that she has to her urine that male lions can detect. In actual fact, I think almost any animal will be able to detect it if they wanted to. I don't think that it would result in her becoming any more attractive to flies. I would have to say that my answer to that question would be no. I just think that she was probably in an area where there were lots of flies, and potentially it was hot, or maybe her skin was wet and they were just sucking off the moisture. Maybe she had rolled in some dung of some sort, or you know, it could be a variety of reasons why the flies would be attracted to her. I do know when I've been to the Masai Mara, the flies around the large herds of wildebeest there have just been insane. So I hope that sufficiently answers your question there, Dennis. Andrew doing a wonderful job there of giving you an impression of what this bush looks like. Lovely clear blue sky. They're lying in the shade of a knobthorn tree, or a combination of a knobthorn tree and a guari bush. On the slopes of a hill on the eastern side of Djuma. So what we do from time to time is leave it up to you to decide what we're going to be doing. And I can say that from my experience, these Matimas are not, made a faux pas there. These Birmingham boys are not going to be going anywhere until I say 10 past 6 tonight. That's a bet that myself and Andrew have got on at the moment. I know that they like to sleep until it gets dark. So we've got a choice. We can leave and go and look for something else, or we can stay and answer some more of your questions. I'm going to leave it up to you to answer that for me, and we'll take a vote, or Tara and Jess in final control will take a vote on that, and we'll leave it up to you. Don't forget, you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send us an email, questions@wildearth.tv, and let's see what everyone thinks. See that male lion just rolling over? Once again, just cooling off, relaxing against his brother's back. Now, sleeping lions leave a very distinctive track on the floor, or should I say they leave a very distinctive sign on the floor. Always on the shady side of the tree. When you come tracking lions that have come through an area, quite often you find where they've slept under a tree, and because they roll around so much and join one another so much, they really flatten the grass on the shady side of the tree. So they'll either be a flat side on the eastern side of the tree, or on the western side of the tree, depending on when the time of day was that they actually laid down there. And it's quite a useful indication as to how many lions were there and at what time of the day. So if you had to come tracking these lions, for instance, tomorrow morning, and we were to walk in this area, we'd be able to see a clear indication of where they'd slept this grass nice and flat in these very peculiar or particular lion-sized imprints. And we would have been able to deduce that because they are lying on the eastern side of these trees, that they would have been lying here during the day today. Alright, so the poll has closed on our vote whether we stay or go, and it looks like the majority of you would like us to move on and go find something else and then return in a little bit when it starts getting a bit cooler, and potentially when these lions are a little bit more active. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Oh, excuse me, that flower is buzzing around my nose, still making me give me the absolute shivers. Are we going to be moving off? We'll come back in a little bit when it gets a bit cooler, and I'm sure that they'll still be here. So while we do that, while Andrew and I leave the sighting, we're going to be sending you through to Jamie, and I'm sure Jamie has got something nice to show you, or at least an update on what she's busy doing, and we'll catch up with you in a little bit. Ciao.
The bird below.
Welcome back, guys. And repositioned to get a nice position of these birds. And we've also got a brown-hooded kingfisher that has joined us as well. And we look now at the fork-tailed drongo, which was the little blackbird that we started on, and now we've got this beautiful kingfisher. And both of them are here for the same purpose. They're following behind these ellies and just waiting for them to stir up a couple of insects during their foraging missions. And the name kingfisher can be incredibly deceptive, because most of our kingfishers in this area are not in fact fishers. There's only two species, the pied and the giant kingfisher, that really are reliant on fishing for fish. The rest of them are insect eaters and little carnivores that go after things like grasshoppers and dung beetles. So a slightly deceptive name, but that is what they are. And I'm just going to duck down so we can have a look at what this female's doing. And to make up for the fact that her trunk is lacking in those last few critical inches, she uses her feet quite a lot as well. And all elephants do this, but she does it a lot more than others to help her get to the roots of the grass. And I was wrong about the gender of the younger one. It is in fact a young male. So there is a young, probably around 8-year-old female, and then a 4-year-old male, and then this big female with the short trunk. And I've mentioned that I think that this is probably her calf, at least the little one is. And Michelle has a really brilliant question about whether or not this little male will copy mom's feeding techniques and learn from them and learn to feed that way, even though he has a completely fully developed trunk, or whether he would naturally use his trunk in the way that instinct has taught him. And just from watching him, he uses it in the way of elephants without that problem. So he doesn't seem to copy mom too much. It seems as though instinct is strong as to how to use his trunk. So both of these two do have very normal elephant feeding patterns. It's just the female who has to work a little bit harder. They're all using their feet to get the grass roots up as well. But you can see that it's a lot easier for this young female to wrap her trunk around, beat the grass to get rid of the dust and the sand, and then to put it straight into her mouth. And in contrast, this female has to work a little bit harder. But she's still able to bend it around and beat off the dust. And I think she just managed to flick some into my eye as well, which is quite impressive because we're still quite far away from them. Oh, and you can see a little bit clumsy, just lacking in that dexterity. But there we go. She's managed to get some roots in there. Still a little bit too full of dirt for her liking, but she's going to chomp away. Still got that flexibility in the trunk. And those trunks are such phenomenal instruments. There's somewhere in the region of between 50 to 100,000 muscle bands, or different muscles within that trunk, all in different cross sections, longitudinal, latitudinal, and then across it, so that it can create that accordion motion when they want to stretch it out or curl it up. They're really, really impressive tools of the elephant's trade. And we are probably about 2 or so kilometers from where Steph has just left the Birmingham boys. And Deb was wondering if these little Ellies might be more at risk of attack from lions, since this herd is so tiny. It's just the one female with the 2 young ones. And Deb, even a female on her own like this would be able to probably fend off an attack by even the Birmingham boys, although there are certain lion prides that specialize in hunting elephants. But I think that her aggression and her size would be enough to put them off probably completely. And the oldest the middle female is also big enough to fend off a lion attack. And the calf is also probably past the danger age. However, if she did have another calf in the next few years, it might be she would be more at risk of attack by lions. She would still very vigorously defend her babies, and elephants are very fast and surprisingly agile for creatures of that size. So it's unlikely that a coalition such as the Birminghams would try it, but it's not unheard of, and it does happen. You do get lions that start to specialize in killing large animals such as elephants. However, the chances of them doing that, unless they are really desperate for prey, are pretty slim, because you have to remember that even a slight injury could wind up being fatal out here. So no lion wants to risk it unless they are probably fairly desperate, or the chances of success are good. And just sitting in this large drainage line reminds me of a time that I spent with elephants about 2 years ago. And we'd done a sleep out with our guests on a big wooden deck that overlooked the river. And we'd spent the whole night listening to the elephants feeding below us. It was new moon, so we couldn't see them at all. We could only really hear them and see the odd silhouette passing in front of us. It was a very special evening, and the next day we set off in high spirits early in the morning, and we went to turn one of the cars around, and it slipped down the bank slightly. And at that time its 4x4 and its diff lock weren't working. And that vehicle proceeded to stay in that river for about, I would say, 12 hours. And during those 12 hours, in the sort of height of the end of the dry season, so October, when it's really, really hot and there's no moisture in the air, we worked at trying to dig it out, we worked at trying to tow it out. And in the true definition of madness, we had repeated attempts of the same thing, expecting different results. Every time we tried to tow the car out, it slid back in and nearly pulled another vehicle in after it. And right at sort of 12 o'clock in the afternoon, the height of frustration, a friend of mine and I decided we'd go for a walk in the river. We could still hear the Ellies. So we abandoned the car and our workstations, and we set off in between the reeds. And we took off our shoes and we crept through the sand. And we sat in the shade underneath a tree, and there was still a little bit of water in the river. It was the Makutsi River. And we sat huddled under the shade, watching a baby elephant. The elephants knew we were there. They spotted us fairly quickly, despite our best efforts to be very quiet. But they were comfortable enough at the distance we were at to move a little bit closer, have a look, and then the babies started playing in the water puddle. And I still remember that feeling of complete and utter contentment, even in the middle of a blistering hot, somewhat frustrating day. They do occasionally happen here. And then we went back to get the car out with a definite feeling of being completely refreshed and ready to start again. And as soon as we got back, we got the car out first effort. They do have a very special effect on those around them. And if we have a look at her right ear, which is something that I think will be quite a defining feature of her when we next see her to identify her, apart from the tiny little flap on the edge, there's also that raised bump just halfway between the edge of the ear and the ear canal opening. And I'm not too sure what that is. It might just be a slight abscess. It doesn't seem to be swollen on the other side. It could be a benign growth, but not something that I think is too serious. You do occasionally get elephants with odd little skin polyps, little skin growths on this around them, and it can either be on their backs or their sides. And this is the first time I've seen it on an elephant ear, but very observant, Judith. We will definitely be using that as a way of identifying her in future. And it might even just be a small cyst. These ellies have spent quite a lot of time digging up the roots that are around here, and I think that is because they are struggling now with the nutrition levels of the grass. You can see a lot of the grass stems are looking very dry and dead, but they are digging beneath the surface to get to the roots of these plants and the rhizomes beneath them. And John was wondering if our ellies dig for potatoes here. And they will definitely dig for the various tubers that we get. And it's always a very useful thing to remember that what an elephant can eat doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe for humans to eat. A lot of the tubers that look like onions or potatoes in this area are actually fairly toxic to humans. But for the ellies, they make a very useful, very nutritional snack.